What is going on, everybody? It's Blue. We are here. Feral finally got nerfed. This is the second time, and all the nerfs have been very minor, um, which I applaud Blizzard. This specific nerf was the best way to go about nerfing our strong point, which is basically AOE and Mythic Plus. I personally felt like, hey, moving into Dragonflight, you know, Feral in the right hands had the potential to be the top. Obviously it's really difficult to say because you don't know who's playing against and who you're comparing to. But Feral was extremely competitive with the very top tier DPSers, melee DPSers, and I think depending on who was playing what spec, they could have been interchanged. So Feral could, I think, at the prior to this nerf, was the top dog, right, of melee damage. Now, with that said, I don't think that's a good spot for Feral to be in, taking into consideration that, hey, Feral's got a really nice buff, a party buff or a raid buff with Mark of the Wild, where you bring 3% verse for your entire party or your entire raid. That is really good. That is 3% damage overall. Thank you, community, for making me aware of that. And also to take into consideration, like, we're not even thinking that's 1.5% damage reduction. Like, these are really, the party buff is really, really good. And to think about how Feral was excelling so well and bringing these utilities, it really just wasn't fair. So Feral definitely needed to move down a notch or two. And I think that's what they did, right? So what we're looking at is we're preparing a tuning pass that focuses on high target count situations. Okay, that's very much Feral, based on data gathered from Dragonflight Beta. And we're adding reduced damage effects, 5 targets, 8 targets, to a number of AOE spells, reducing the damage of a few spells and increasing the damage of others. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this link in the video. If you feel like you have an accurate idea of how the specs are performing, you can go ahead and take a look at, be like, oh, okay, Unholy was in this spot, and I know this damage about Unholy and blah, blah. If it's reduced, then you can kind of compare where we're at. But we have Tear Open Wounds now deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. This is quite substantial for Feral Druid. If you think about the newer dungeon, Algathar Academy, this is, especially during the tree boss, it was very, Feral was doing an insane amount on the tree boss specifically, but even before that, you can pull the entire tree boss area of ads before the boss, comes about. And Feral, Feral was capable of doing 200, 300, pushing those crazy DPS numbers, and basically the reason for it was because Tear Open Wounds was hitting every single target, for like 16.5, 18.5k. That was ridiculous, and basically that is an easy damage rotation, which basically consists of, hey, go through rotation really quickly, proc Blood Talons, and Primal Wrath back to back. Primal Wrath, Blood Talons, Primal Wrath, Blood Talons. Maybe you even get a bite in between, which makes those Tear Open Wounds do even more. And it's basically pretty easy, and you could get a huge damage number on that. So it makes sense that this is reduced to 5 targets. Obviously, we'd like to see it reduced by 8 targets. That would probably be the best nerf. So this is going to be the second best nerf that Feral could have received. But we're going to say this is the best nerf because Feral was very much strong in AoE. I'm not super confident on how it is on single target, but I'm not confident in saying that Feral was the best single target. I do not believe that at all, and I think it was middle of the pack. So this was the best way of going about nerfing Feral in dungeons without affecting their single target. So this was a very smart decision to do. But yeah, again, this is going to be a big damage for those huge AoE packs. When those huge AoE packs exist, Rip normally was our top damage, and then very close after that was going to be Tear Open Wounds. Was Tear Open Wounds when it wasn't target capped, right? Now it being target capped, it's going to be, way lower. But again, is that going to be a huge substantial nerf, seeing how all these other individuals are nerfed as well? I don't know. When I did beta keys last night, I don't want to be, high and mighty, but when I normally do beta keys, I'm the top damage dealer, right? I don't play Feral the best possible. I play it optimally enough to do well on it, and its damage was good enough that I was always doing the top damage, right? I logged on last night, and I'm like, dude, am I messing something up? Am I just like not doing well? Because the Demon Hunter was kicking my butt at damage, and then also um, the Enhancement Shaman was very close to kicking my butt. And I'm just like, bro, I know Enhancement Shamans got nerfed hard. Something's going on. Feral must have received a nerf if Enhancement Shamans are close to me. So obviously they got this 5% buff. We got this nerf. And Havoc also got a nerf, but again, it's 8 targets, so maybe it doesn't affect them as well. But it was felt. And I ended the dungeon in second place. Demon Hunter was in first place overall damage, right? But that's the way it probably should be, right? Because Feral brings a really good Mark of the Wild buff, right? So we're going to go ahead and take a look. I did dummy damage. This is on 4 targets. Our Tear Open Wounds is hitting for 16.5k. I wasn't buffed of when I normally put my buffs on, so this could be much higher. But again, these are what you're going to see. This is in the talents right here, Tear Open Wounds. Now, some of you guys may ask me, like, oh, okay, well, is this going to change the guide and the rotation? It is not. People are going to be like, oh, so maybe Bite is more important instead of Primal Wrathing back to back. No, it's not. Basically, they made Tear Open Wounds act identical to Bite. Bite is going to hit a target, and it's going to do... Well, Bite's going to hit a target, and then it's going to do 25% of that to other targets around. But once it hits 5 targets, it's going to do reduced effects. Basically, pretty similar with Tear Open Wounds. It's going to act the same, so it's not going to change how you go about it. Unfortunately, it's just going to be a nerf to those big AOE packs to make us in line with the rest of the damage. So I feel like this was a very good change. Unfortunately, we probably are going to be struggling to be... the top damage dealer, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with struggling to earn your spot. That's a good thing, especially seeing how we probably bring one of the most important buffs to Mythic Plus, depending on your comp. But it's like, yeah, bring Feral, and it doesn't matter what type of comp you run. 3% verse is good for anybody. That's 3%. That's dope, and it's percent damage reduced, right? So it's great. Verse is great. So I value that really strong, and I think other people will too. But unfortunately, if you are newer to Feral and you don't perform super optimally on Feral, you may struggle a little bit, because unfortunately Tear Open Wounds was an easy effect. On those huge AoEs, even if you weren't hitting your Blood Talons, you proc Tear Open Wounds, and it's going to be hitting every single target, and it was going to really help sustain your lack of knowledge with the spec, because as long as you prime back to back, that's an easy thing to remember, and you'll be like, oh, I'm doing a lot of damage, right? Unfortunately, now you are going to be less reliant on that, and now you're going to have to be more reliant on playing the spec correctly. So unfortunately, there are individuals that do play Feral that are probably going to struggle with a lot of the minor things, and it's going to be more apparent from those individuals for the ones that are trying to play it optimally, which can be a bummer. It may deter some people from getting into it. If you're newer, I would say watch the guide videos. I think there's a lot of strange things that people say about Feral, but as long as they're explained in a correct way, it's really not that difficult at all. But that's it. We received a nerf, you guys. This is probably the best nerf that we can get. You definitely don't want to be the strongest spec moving into Dragonflight, and then they don't have a lot of time to quickly correct that, and then instead they're just like, okay, what do we need to do? Okay, Rip. Let's nerf Rip. Let's nerf Rake, right? Right, so this is great. I think this is going to put us in a very good spot moving into Dragonflight. But that's it. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you have a wonderful night. Good holidays coming up. That is it for me. Take it easy. Peace.